What's going on? It's Mustafa Ali. It's loud as hell in here, but you should be listening to Card Subject to Change.
Welcome back to the show.
Welcome back to the show.
You know, the custody. God, I can't believe we're saying this. I mean, what do you drop that suitcase with as a big chicken nugget? If you want to go ahead and make it right for Dominic, since he likes chicken nuggets or whatever. He has got to be the most
briefcase full of chicken fingers.
Yeah, there you go.
And then that's when I found ECW, and RVD changed my life. I actually saw a clip of the Van Terminator, and I remember the hype going into, I think it was like 2000. I remember the hype going into a heat wave that RVD created this new move, and it did not disappoint. It was amazing. And the Van Terminator alone was the reason why I actually pursued professional wrestling.
Just, it blows my mind. And I'm tugging on my mom's pants and stuff. And I'm like, Mom. And she's like, yeah, what? And I go, I want to do that. And I'm pointing at the TV. Well, she looks and she goes, oh, you want to be like Macho Man and wear the cool sunglasses and say, oh, yeah, and do the elbow drop? And I go, no, I want to be the guy throwing snakes at people.
Yeah.
And now, your hosts of the Card Subject to Change podcast, the For Frequency's Sake Tag Team Champions of the World, the Wizard CZ, and never wrong, Nick Bull.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting edition of the Card Subject to Change podcast, the podcast by the fan for the fan. I am your host, never wrong, Nick Bull. I want to let you know that we are powered by Lopez Pizza, built by Durham Remodeling, colored by Ryan Allison Tattoo, and protected by Jared Zook of Country Financial. Episode 142, Keeping the Faith. Thank you for keeping the faith and coming back and joining us for another episode. We're so glad you're here. We couldn't do this without my co-partner, my co-champ of the For Frequency's Sake Network, the one, the only, the Wizard CZ. Wiz, how you doing?
I'm feeling pretty good. We got to see some live wrestling last night. Always a good weekend when you can see some live wrestling. And I'm excited. We've got somebody brand new in the house. Someone a little outside of our area. He's from Southeast Georgia. A little bit north of Jacksonville. We're going to bring him on here in just a minute. I'm excited to talk to somebody new, Nick. What do you think?
Yeah, we were kind of sharing off air. Anytime you get to talk to somebody about wrestling is great, but talking to somebody new that you've never met before and talking wrestling and hitting it off with wrestling is really a cool thing. And that's what I really like about this show is I love all of our guests. I love having people on here repeat times, but those times we have somebody on the first time and get to pick their brain and hear their wrestling story and what they like about wrestling or what they watch in wrestling is really my favorite part about this show. So I'm looking forward to that part.
Yeah, and we're going to bring him into the studio. He is a second-generation wrestler and an Army veteran. Let's welcome into the studio Mr. Johnny Faith. Johnny, how are you, my friend?
Hey, gentlemen, good. I'm good this evening. It's good to see you guys, and thank you guys for having me on. It's a great opportunity, and I'm excited to talk wrestling with you guys and share some stories.
Well, we want to thank you, one, for coming on, and also we want to thank you, two, for your service. We appreciate that.
Hey, thank you, sir. I appreciate the support, and yeah, thanks.
Well, Johnny, I'm going to kick it off like I always do every show, and I ask our first-time guests the same question. So I'm going to treat you the same, just like everybody else. Why pro wrestling? What got you hooked into this wonderful thing that we all love and want to talk about?
So as a kid, I was flipping through Saturday morning cartoons, looking for something to watch. You know, it's kind of the same old stuff. I was bored, didn't really see anything. And then bam, I'd hit the channel and there was a WCW Saturday morning program on my television screen for the first time ever. And I was hooked, and I wound up telling my mom all about it and was like, you know, look at this. I found this, like these big guys, you know, they're beating the crap out of each other, you know, throwing each other around. And my mom was like, you should talk to your grandfather. because your grandfather did that in the 70s and early 80s.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm like 7 years old. And my mom's telling me this. So, you know, the next time I see my grandfather, you know, which was, you know, probably later that day or the next day, because, you know, we all lived in the same neighborhood. So we were kind of a close knit group. I asked him all about it, and he was just like, you know, I got so much to tell you, you know, if you really want to hear. And, you know, that's when he told me he was a professional wrestler. He worked in the Southeast. So he worked mostly North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, some Florida, that area. He worked for the Crockett's for a little while here and there throughout his career as well. He worked for the IWA as well. And, you know, he pretty much went all throughout the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast, you know, during his about 8 or 9 year wrestling career. So bam, you know, family lineage, that is what got me hooked on professional wrestling right there.
We've never had an answer like that, Johnny. We've had people on that had a relative or so that maybe dabbled in the profession a little bit, but nobody that, you know, sustained it for a 9-year run. And you're down there in the heart of.
So
look at that.
Here's a picture of him and his tag team partner. My grandfather's the one with the goatee kneeling, but that's a picture of him and his tag team partner.
What was the name of the tag team, and what was his ring name?
I am unsure of the tag team name, but I know his ring name was Jimmy Faith.
Okay. That is so cool. You are in the heart of the Mid-Atlantic territory, Georgia Championship Wrestling, and your grandpa was your grandpa was a part of that. I mean, if I was 6 or 7 years old and I had a relative, particularly a grandfather, that did that, my mind would be blown. I mean, you had to be like a kid in a candy store at that time.
I was. It was very interesting, you know, and then my mom would chime in some and be like, you know, I remember going and seeing Dad wrestle, and, you know, he'd bring home these great big belts. And, you know, as a kid, I never really understood what those were. And, you know, obviously as I got older, I understood. But, you know, I remember going to wrestling matches, and Mom would drive us, you know, to see Grandpa wrestle or to see Dad wrestle. And, you know, that was pretty cool. You know, that you know, my mom had that connection as well. And then we wound up watching wrestling together throughout, you know, the rest of my, you know, teenage years and all that, up until I got out of the house. You know, we watched wrestling every Monday night during the Monday Night Wars and all that. You know, so that was a great, once I discovered wrestling and they realized I was interested in it, that was a great relationship builder, you know, for my mother and for me and my grandfather as well.
Okay, so you mentioned the Monday Night Wars. Whenever I hear that, in the back of my mind, my first question is, were you a WCW guy or were you a WWF guy?
I was a WCW guy, and I'll tell you why. Because my grandfather was very particular with WCW. Because a lot of his friends, a lot of his, you know, acquaintances, people that he wrestled throughout his career, you know, wound up either working for them as either a wrestler or a backstage agent or in some capacity. And he didn't really like the WWF back then because, you know, they were buying up all the territories. And, you know, he really didn't like that his buddies were getting put out of jobs and they were trying to find other places to work. And he didn't really like that much about WWF, but, you know, he was really keen to WCW. So I think that's where my heritage lies with WCW. Plus, that was the first ever wrestling program I ever found on TV.
I was just going to ask, fair. With being a WCW guy, was WCW Saturday night, as Dusty Rhodes called it, the mothership? Was it appointment viewing for you back in the day?
Every Saturday night at 6:05 sharp.
Yes.
Whether I was at home, whether I was at my grandparents' house, you know, it didn't matter. If I could get on that TV and watch it, I would. Same with Mondays. Same with, you know, even WWF shows like programming, like Shotgun Saturday Night. That used to come on really late at night on Saturday nights, and I'd be a kid staying awake late watching Shotgun Saturday Night. You know, once I figured out what WWF was, and once I discovered WWF and their programming, you know, then it was, you know, 24/7 wrestling. As long as I could get a hold of a TV, I was watching it.
So let me ask you this. Obviously, your grandfather, obviously your family heritage, but who do you gravitate towards in the world of wrestling? Who inspired you to actually put on the boots, put on the tights, and get in the ring?
Who actually inspired? That's a good one. I don't know I don't know if I've been asked who has inspired me in the world of wrestling. You know, I always thought Stone Cold was really cool because he beat the crap out of everyone. And I always thought it would be a good idea or a good job to show up to work every day and beat the crap out of people, especially your boss. You know, so I always thought that was probably a very fun job and something that I could do. You know, and plus even growing up in the early 90s with the cartoonish characters, you know, that WWF had, you know, and how cartoony they were and how more they were inclined to, you know, children and audiences of, you know, small kids and stuff. You know, I love that too, because you could be anything. You could be a garbage man kicking the crap out of somebody. You know, you could be, you know, the Brooklyn Brawler. Like, you know, it didn't matter who you were. You know, I was all about, you know, contact sports growing up, I guess. Watching TV, beginnings of UFC and things like that. But, you know, wrestling really helped me, you know, pass the time, you know, when it came to watching TV and all that. So to be honest with you, the only person I could really think of, you know, besides like Ric Flair, you know, and, you know, the people that influenced me as well. Stone Cold, I always thought was cool because he just showed up every day and beat the crap out of people, including his boss. So I always thought, you know, if I could grow up to do something like that, you know, maybe that would be a pretty good job for me.
We're joined here on the Card Subject to Change podcast by war-driven Johnny Faith, the podcast by the fan for the fan. And Johnny, I want to ask you, is there like a particular angle or a match you remember growing up that really stuck with you and, you know, still sticks with you to this day? I mean, for example, I'll remember when Macho Man got bit by Jake the Snake's Cobra, and that really resonated with me as a kid. Like, I thought I couldn't believe a guy was getting bit in the ring by a cobra, and that like it still sticks with me after all these years. Is there something, a match or an angle that you saw growing up, or maybe in your teenage years, that really stuck with you and is very memorable for you?
It had to be the infamous Hell in a Cell, Undertaker versus Mankind. You know, like when Undertaker first threw Mankind off that cage through that announce table, and, you know, everyone kind of was questioning, you know, was it real? Did it happen? Like, did people know about it? Is the match going to continue? Is the match over? Like, is that it? Is it a one and like just off, you know, because we never seen nothing like that before. I mean, the Hell in a Cell concept, we hadn't really seen that much prior to that match as well. We saw, you know, at Bad Blood, you know, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, and something similar to that where Shawn fell through the announce table, but he was only hanging off the side of the cage. He didn't get thrown off the top. So to see that as a kid, I think I was 13 or 14. To see that as a kid, I was just like, whoa. And then the match went on and continued for like another 20 minutes. Then he got choke slammed through the cage roof onto the ring. Like, seeing that even seeing it today, you know, 25 plus years later, you know, it still baffles me that, you know, he continued and was tough. And, you know, that intrigued me as well to be a wrestler, because I mean, that took some guts, and, you know, that took some fortitude, you know, that a lot of people don't have. And to see, you know, larger than life characters like that on the screen, or people portrayed like that, you know, that really resonated with me, that match. And it'll always be a great moment in wrestling history as well, because I even watched it live, you know, on a little 13-inch screen TV with my uncle and my grandpa. You know, we watched it live, you know, it happened on pay-per-view, and that will always resonate with me as one of the memories that helped me get into the ring, inspired me to be a wrestler, and just overall just entertained the crap out of me probably for the rest of my life, that match.
Yeah, that's a very polarizing match. I mean, I'm a few years older than you. I remember having friends over, watching it live on pay-per-view, and we're all looking at each other in disbelief like, did that just happen? You know, wrestling is quote-unquote fake, but there was nothing fake about that. I saw that with my own eyes. A guy got thrown off a cage and went into a table. That wasn't fake, you know, and I think everybody that's seen that live or maybe saw it for the first time will remember where they were and always go back to that. That's a great point. That's easily one of the most memorable matches of all time. Once you think about it, all the players involved and all the different things that happened. I know I know CZ, we've talked about this match ad nauseum before, just all the different intricacies of it. You know, you got Taker, Mankind, Mick Foley, whatever you want to call him. Terry Funk gets involved. I mean, there was
like
there was
pretty
a
much
lot.
all the backstage people got involved. They came out there was trying to tell them to stay down. Like, hey, stay down, man. We're good. Nah, man, let's keep going. Let's get the tax out and, you know, like just beat the crap out of each other. Like that's all that match was just them two just brawling. Like it was just like a straight brawl. Like, and you know, I think Taker was just as shocked as the world was that Mick Foley kept going. You know, and I mean, if you look at him a few times throughout that match, his facial expressions is just like, I can't believe this dude is still going. Like, you know, I'm hitting him in the head with stairs. You know, he just got thrown on some tacks. Like he's still going.
I hope I don't get charged with attempted murder.
like that bad.
I mean, for something that's quote unquote fake like that, it all felt so real because all the involvement of everybody was concerned. I mean, it's one of those you always remember where you were for sure.
Yeah, and I even remember as a kid. See, as a kid, you know, Grandpa taught me the tricks and trades of the business, you know, here and there. He didn't try to spoil everything for me because I was still a kid. But you know, when the people with the gurneys would come out, when the ambulance, you know, the EMTs would come out, you know, then I would be like, oh, that's the real deal right there. Like they really got hurt, or you know, something went wrong, or you know, something, you know, and you know, the illusion, I think, you know, and even probably my innocence as a child probably contributed to that disbelief when it comes to the ambulances. And then, you know, years later, you know, reading all the interviews about how that match went and how like it was like Terry Taylor and Funk just telling Foley to stay down, and you know, it's pretty cool, and it will always be a special place and a special match in my heart, you know, probably for the rest of my life. Something I could probably watch every day at least once.
For sure.
So what are you watching current product? Where do you gravitate towards now?
So I am actually not watching any current product. So what I have done is I started WWF Raw when it first went on the air. So in 1995, I started all the way at season 1, episode 1, and I have worked my way through all those episodes of Raw, all the pay-per-views in between, and I am up to almost the first edition of SmackDown. So I'm up to August of 1999. So I've watched pretty much WWF from like 95 to 99 over the last probably 2 years of my life. I don't watch any new product except for things that people send me or that I see on Facebook or things like that. So I'm not saying I don't watch it completely. It's just I'm not really keeping up with it. I'm trying to, I don't know. I've been on this kick for trying to watch all the WWF stuff that I can, you know, up until I guess a certain point. And then I'm going to go back and do the same thing with WCW. I'll start probably in 1995 before the Monday Night War started and work my way all the way up at some point. And then, you know, I'll start maybe with TNA or something. I don't know. But, you know, I do follow the product. It's just not very closely. And, you know, it's not like if you ask me questions about AEW right now, I probably wouldn't be able to understand or help you with that. And it's not that I don't like it or anything like that. It's just right now I am on, you know, this binge watch of WWF throughout the mid 90s and late 90s.
Well, let me be the first. I'll speak for CZ here. And thank you for your dedication to going back and doing that. I've always wanted to do that. And it's just like, I don't know if I can. I mean, that takes some time and dedication. What is the biggest thing that sticks out to you in those early years of Raw?
The way the wrestling was presented, because it was, if you look at the beginnings of Raw, there really wasn't a stage. The lighting wasn't really that great. They were in the Manhattan Center. So, I mean, it wasn't a well-lit building, anything like that. There were maybe a couple thousand fans there. So the way the wrestling was presented, you know, because they were building, you know, they really were, you know, they were really trying to, you know, compete with WCW, obviously, or at least trying to start to see if they could.
Yep.
And if they could put on a good weekly product and not the weekend shows like Shotgun Saturday Night or, you know, the other Saturday morning show that they started putting out, you know, they wanted a primetime slot. And, you know, those early days, the wrestling was really good. The storylines were okay. It had the cartoon character gimmicks. still obviously. And, some people didn't really like that. But if you paid attention to just the wrestling itself, ignore the characters, ignore the crowd, ignore everything, just watch the wrestling. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just watching the wrestling to study. I'm just trying to study. And, I look at the wrestling and how good it was back then, because it really was.
Proverbial student of the game there, going back, watching old school Raws. The one thing that stands out to me of the old school Raws are Macho Man on the announce team. And the beginning of the show, they always were like, uncut, uncooked, uncensored. It just, that always brings a smile to my face hearing Vince and Macho Man saying that particular line.
Yeah.
We're joined here by Johnny Faith on the Card Subject to Change podcast, the podcast by the fan for the fan. We're powered by Lopez Pizza, built by Durham Remodeling, colored by Ryan Allison Tattoo, and protected by Jared Zook of Country Financial. I guess we'll still stick with this 95, 99 era of wrestling you've been watching. Outside of that King of the Ring match, from either Raw or those earlier pay-per-views during this time, what sticks out to you besides, the quality of the wrestling? Is there a wrestler that really hopped out at you as you go back and watch this again for like the first time? And is there a particular match that stands out for you?
So another thing that I also am paying attention to is the evolution of Stone Cold Steve Austin between this time period. So from like 1995, when he first came to WWF, when he was like the ringmaster,
yep.
And all that, and held the $1 Million Championship belt and all that, all the way up until probably that infamous Austin 316 promo at King of the Ring. Just watching the way he evolved throughout that time period, where he became more of himself than he was the ringmaster or stunning Steve Austin or, the Hollywood Blondes. He became a more authentic version of himself. And pretty much just showed up to work every day, mad as hell, ready to beat somebody up, and watching that evolution and watching that crowd really, really eat at that, because, that crowd is that blue collar worker that hates their boss, that wishes they could go into work and stun their boss and, flip them off and, do all that stuff. Watching him evolve over those 3 or 4 years was really eye-opening.
I like that word a lot, evolution, because that era, you saw a lot of evolution with a lot of different wrestlers, like The Rock. You mentioned Stone Cold, Mankind, Triple H. They all evolved from these early characters that weren't necessarily the greatest thing ever, but here we are, and they become some of the greatest talents to ever step in the ring, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you had The Rock. You had The Rock, who, was all flashy, came out with the tassels and all that good stuff, and then he started, becoming a more authentic version of himself, just like Mick Foley, he became a more authentic version of himself. And the evolution of those characters between that 95 and the Attitude Era was I really liked watching, because, it went from cartoony to the real deal, and let's get it on,
Oh, yeah. And towards the end of where you're at, the 97 through 99, WCW really brought that out in the WWF, because they had to change what they were doing. WWF for a long time, like you said, had the cartoony gimmicks, had the people who had to have a secondary job. I'm looking at you, Duke the Dumpster Droese. But WCW really made them change the game, and in doing so, made the product just better all around.
Yeah, and I mean, even at that time, WCW was doing great things. Their wrestling was really good from pretty much from 95 to like 98, 99. WCW had some great wrestling. You could turn on, Nitro and expect, quality matches for every match, not just, one or two good matches here and there. Every match was good. The cruiserweights were good, even up into the main event. Now, eventually the storylines became redundant and more based on, top stars than other guys, but, it's a different story for a different day. But the wrestling period, was some good wrestling back then. So, they, even though WWF had to, as you say, evolve, because WCW was really putting out some good wrestling at the time, and the ratings were showing, and so were the fans.
Johnny, I agree with you that WCW mid-card on Nitro, I would go out of my way to watch. I loved the cruiserweights. I loved even the TV title chase at that time, because you had Steven Regal, you had Fit Finlay, Dean Malenko was involved in there. I think Booker T was, before he really made it big.
You had
I loved the
Inferno.
WCW mid-card. Absolutely loved it. They had some great matches, some good wrestlers too.
Yeah, and it was the first match to the main event. Sometimes the main event was hit or miss. It all depends on what the story was drawn for that night. But you could always count on those first 3 or 4 matches of Nitro to be really good, because that's where you saw, like you said, your Steven Regals, your Fit Finleys, your Booker T's. You would see these guys, and they're freaking phenomenal wrestlers. And just right off the bat, to see some great wrestling. WWF had to figure out a way to counteract with that, because like the Wiz was saying, it was cartoony and all that, where WCW was putting out real authentic, knuckling up wrestling, and WWF had to evolve.
They really did, and they did it in a hell of a way, because it changed everything that WCW did, made WWF change, which changed the business as a whole. And yeah, there were times between then and now where it got stagnant, but for the most part, everything changed for the better, in my opinion, because you got those real life interactions. It's not just, oh, I don't like you because you're a clown, or something ridiculous like that. It's, oh, you're cheating. Like what pops into my mind, the whole Edge and Matt Hardy storyline, that was 100% real. They had that real animosity, but they were professional enough that they could work together, and it looked good.
Yeah, definitely. I liked how you brought that up, because I really liked that, because when that happened, Matt Hardy was wrestling for Ring of Honor, and back then it was like WCW or WWF was like a monopoly. So pretty much we knew that if you were wrestling for Ring of Honor or any of these other independent companies, you weren't wrestling for WWF, because they were exclusive WWF talent only. So when you saw Matt Hardy show up here and there, beating up Edge backstage, coming through the crowd, stealing the microphone, doing his promo, giving props to Ring of Honor, telling WWF to screw themselves, that was real. And, that was authentic. And that's what drives people. At least that's what drove me. That's what made me really enjoy the wrestling post cartoonish WWF, if that makes sense. Was that realness?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel the world of wrestling, these writers, the creators, they're throwing everything they can at the wall. But I think the stuff that sticks the most is the real. When you're as real as possible and it comes across as real, that drives home with the fan. And you're right, with that Matt Hardy and Edge thing. You're right. WWE had a monopoly at the time, and they wouldn't let their talent work anywhere else. And as a wrestling fan, he's in Ring of Honor, but how is he here on Monday night? That was a major deal. I remember when that was happening. I know CZ and I were working together at the time and couldn't believe how big of a deal that was when it was happening. That was 2005, when a talent was on the indies, working for the indies, and then shows up on WWE. I mean, that was a very big deal. I'm glad you brought that up, CZ.
Yeah, me too. Because even back then when I saw that happening, it got me thinking about when ECW first came to WWF in 1998, I think. It was 1998, 1999, somewhere ECW.
Somewhere along there, yeah.
Yeah, and they were doing a program with Jerry Lawler and, all that. And he even went on their show. And all that. So it got me thinking. I was like, maybe it's the real deal. I don't know, maybe not. But then the whole love triangle, Matt Lita, Edge thing came out. So then you were like, oh, wow. So they're actually going to brawl at this next pay-per-view. So I might have to pay $50 to watch Matt Hardy beat the brakes off of Edge for stealing his girl. I think Matt Hardy wound up losing over some BS screwy finish, but other than that was good though. But it was real, it was raw, and that's I think that's, what really drove home the Attitude Era on both sides, WWF and WCW, because they got away from all that cartoony smoke and mirrors and just focused on the realness and the wrestling. Obviously with a bunch of adult humor thrown in there and, sex appeal and things like that. But the bottom line was the wrestling was real. It wasn't cartoony. It wasn't flamboyant, really. It was knuckle up, drag out, let's get it on.
Well, we are having a great conversation with war-driven Johnny Faith, and I hate to break it up, but we're about 30 minutes into the show, and we got to pay dues to our network and our sponsors. So we're going to take a quick break. On the other side of the break, we'll have our weekly moment of focus with the feline phenom JT Energy. But stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.
Football season may be over, but for frequency's sake, still has you covered for all your sporting needs. Tune in every Sunday when the best professional wrestling podcast around, Cards Subject to Change, gets you caught up on everything inside the ropes. They won't miss a count with weekly analysis and interviews. More into auto racing? We've got a double dose for you on the track. Tune in to Fast Money with Rod Villagomez each week and win some money with the quickest bets in all of sports. Want more insight from Pit Row? Check out the Green, White, and Checkered podcast where they give their insight on everything happening on and off the track. Need your basketball fix? Points in the Paint has you covered with live shows every other week looking at everything in the association. Backed by popular demand, we have the return of The Payoff Pitch, FFSQC's baseball show, covering you on news around the MLB. If you're missing football, don't fret. Mark and Dan still have you covered in the football lounge. Missing Joe Winkle? Probably not, but he's still here talking sports on Educated Ignorance. Football season might be over, but we've still got you covered. For frequency's sake, you know what we mean.
For frequency's sake is brought to you by Durham Remodeling, serving the Quad City area's remodeling and repair needs since 1973. Clint's Draft House, grab a bite and a pint. 7th Street Moline. Lopez, New York-style pizza served up by the slice or pie, Davenport. Lifted Energy, energy drinks, coffee, donuts, and more. #GetLifted. Atomic Sports Cards and Collectibles. Sports cards and memorabilia, vintage clothing, hats, pennants, and more. Ryan Allison Tattoo. Step into the vibrant world of tattoos with Ryan Allison. And A Cut Above, offering quality custom woodwork designed specifically around our customers.
Welcome back to the show.
Welcome back to the show.
We're glad that you're joining us here on the Card Subject to Change podcast by the fan for the fan. We are joined by our guest this week, Johnny Faith. But before we proceed any further with Johnny, it is time for us to stop, pause, and recalibrate as our good friend JT Energy joins us now for a moment of focus.
Welcome to a moment of focus with the feline phenom, JT Energy. And today, what are we focusing on? Let me tell you. You know what we're going to focus on? Taking a step back. Because sometimes when that same thing sits in front of you and it just does not seem like you can get the outcome to change, the outcome you've been looking for, things just aren't going in your favor. Step away, even if it's just for a brief second, to get a reset in your mind and see if you can come back to that with a fresh set of eyes or a fresh mind ready to tackle that objection and see if you can then overcome your obstacle. This has been a moment of focus with the feline phenom, JT Energy.
Always some sage advice from our friend JT Energy. Love having him as a collaborator on the show. Speaking of, you are tuned into Card Subject to Change, the podcast by the fan for the fan. As always, we are powered by Lopez Pizza, built by Durham Remodeling, colored by Ryan Allison Tattoo, and protected by Jared Zook of Country Financial. We are joined this week by a war-driven Johnny Faith. Johnny, I want to get serious. We've been having a lot of good conversations about wrestling, but I want to talk about real life here. I know you are recently making your comeback in the last few months into the ring after a pretty serious medical medical issue. You had a heart attack. Talk about what it was like coming back after something like that.
So on March 6th of this year, I had a heart attack. I was putting together my kid's bed, bunk bed, and just had a heart attack in my driveway. It was pretty tough. I thought my career was over because I didn't know exactly how bad it was. Wound up having a single bypass open heart surgery on it. They wound up, instead of taking a vein from the leg like they're supposed to on a bypass, they wound up taking an artery from my forearm. And they because I'm so young, so they wanted to try something. So it's a procedure that it's not really, it's not a lot of people get it done because they're, usually when you have your heart attacks, or God forbid, hope not, but usually it's an older crowd. And I'm very young, obviously. And so they took the artery from my arm, fused it, bypassed it, had no damage to my heart. Even though I had 98% blockage in my heart.
Wow.
My heart had no damage whatsoever. So I thought, there for a second until they got in there and did the surgery and saw, gave me testing and all that, if my career was still going to be a go or not. So I pretty much sat on my hands for about a month waiting on the answer. So I pretty much had already accepted the fact that I believe my career was over. So when the doctor came back and told me there was no damage to my heart, and as long as I can slowly but steadily work my way back, I should be able to return to full activities. And at the end of May 28th to be exact, I was cleared for 100% full activities. Almost 3 months after the initial heart attack, I was cleared for full 100% activities. So I slowly started going to the gym, slowly started, I went to cardiac rehab, obviously afterwards, just to check on my heart, make sure, put me through some stress tests, to get me fully released for activities. So I spent the entire month of June pretty much preparing for everything. I, did cardiac rehab. I went to the gym slowly. I started eating better. And then I had my first match on the 29th of June. So 29th of June, so almost 4 months after my heart attack, I had my first match. And, it was really enlightening because I spent that entire month of June doing exactly what I needed to do to get back to where I needed to be. I'm still working at it. I am not 100%. I'm still slowly building back towards it. I have had 3 matches since my heart attack. Since I've been fully cleared in May, I've had 3 matches. It has been a tough uphill climb, trying to get back, trying to build my strength back. I lost about 30 pounds, I think. During those 2.5 months, I pretty much sat around and couldn't do anything. And I am slowly building back. Since May, I want to say I'm close. I'm probably in between 90-95% back to where I was. It has been a journey. It's something I work at every day to make sure that I am taking precautions. Even though I've been fully cleared, I am still going to take those precautions, and I am still going to do what I can to make sure that I'm back to where I was at before, and if not, back to being better than before, because the no damage to the heart was a real eye-opener, and it was a miracle, and I do not want to take that for granted. So I want to do what I can to make sure it stays that way, and that I can wrestle for as long as I'm able to.
Absolutely. That's an amazing story. And it's got to inspire, it's got to motivate you, as it definitely sounds like it motivates you to just be the best you can be in and out of the ring.
Yes, it was a real eye-opener. Like I said, they attributed my heart attack to bad genetics. That's the only thing they could really chalk it up as, because my cholesterol tests were good, my blood pressure tests were good. I was a healthy person overall, but they really they couldn't pinpoint anything. So they thought that it was a hereditary thing, or possibly it could have been something from my military career as well, but most likely it was hereditary. And it was just one of those freak things that happened, and miraculously, there was no damage. or very, very minimal to where they couldn't even tell.
Talk about your first time back when you are getting introduced. You're coming back for that first match. I mean, you blow a knee out, they got a timetable for it. If you have a broken arm, they have a timetable for it. Really not a timetable for what happened with you. So as you're battling to make it back in the ring, getting healthier, what was it like coming back for that first match?
Like I said, I spent that whole month of June preparing because there's a company that I wrestle for a lot more than others. It's Heartland Championship Wrestling out of Wichita, Kansas. They are my home company. It's where it's my trainer's company. It's where I was trained.
Mm-hmm.
So once I got the green light that I was cleared for 100% full activities, I had a long talk with my wife and my doctor at the same time. And I said, if I spent the entire month of June slowly building back, going to cardiac rehab, slowly building back, everything that I lost, do you think it's feasible that I could possibly wrestle a match on the 29th of June? Just 29 short days, down the road if I work at it every day. And they were like, no, there should be no reason why you shouldn't. So I messaged Billy Simmons at Heartland Championship Wrestling, my trainer, and was like, hey, I'm coming back early, a lot earlier, because, October, November, December timeframe was what I was supposedly looking at.
Wow.
It was going to be a lot longer, when they first, before they had done all the testing and checked my heart to make sure how much damage there was and all that. They just threw a number out there and was like, 8 months, 7-8 months, you're already going to be out 7-8 months. And, obviously in the back of my mind, I was like, it's going to be sooner than that.
Mm-hmm.
Safely, obviously, but I guarantee you it's going to be sooner than that. And, so I messaged Billy Simmons and was like, hey, I'm cleared for full activities and I'm about to spend the next month, getting in shape, back in the ring, back in the gym slowly, all that. You got an opportunity for me. Like I'm ready to come back and try.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, yes. So what we did was we did this build up, showed me training every day at cardiac rehab. It wasn't even like, it was a surprise appearance. No, people knew I was coming back. Like as soon as I got 100% cleared, if you go back, on my timeline back to like that end of May, I cut a promo right then and there and say, I'm cleared for full activities. Obviously, I'm not going to wrestle for a couple more weeks, a month, something like that, but I'm coming back. We built this huge thing up. With that particular company, I do something at the beginning during the national anthem where I hold the American flag with a fan. I'll go pick a kid out of the crowd and we'll hold the flag together while they sing the national anthem. And they didn't even want me to do that because they wanted them to see Johnny's face the very first time during the show, during my entrance, during my match. So I was match 1, first wrestler through the curtain, and that place just exploded, and it just like blew everyone's mind. Even though I had hyped it up for an entire month, the whole month of June, I had hyped it up. There were still people that don't have social media or don't follow it as much that were just blown away. They were like, oh my God, I had no idea you were going to be here. And
right.
Like, this is crazy. Are you good? Like, are you sure you're good? Are you sure you should be wrestling? Are you okay? Like, is the heart good? Like what's going on? It seems like it's super early for you to come back to wrestle. I'm like, I'm telling you right now, I've been cleared by 3 or 4 different doctors. All my tests checked out. I am cleared. There's no damage to my heart. As long as I slowly make my way back, there is no reason why I should not be wrestling. And that's exactly what I've been doing since then. I've been slowly building back, because I'm not trying to jump back into the saddle 100% like I was wrestling week after week after week.
Right.
I'm going to build back. I'm going to wait till 2025 comes to start that rigorous schedule again. I'm going to take it easy for the next couple months, leading out of 2024 and just make sure that I'm back to where I need to be. But, that first match back was great. It was a great night. My wife got to be there. We made the trip to Kansas together, 18 hours in the car. And, it was probably one of the greatest nights of my life because, I proved not only to myself, but to the world, actually scratch that. Let me rewind that. Let me reverse that. I proved to the world but not, wait, I proved to myself. How about that? Let's just, not the world, myself, that I could have gotten it done quicker than 7 and 8 months. And I did it in 4. I didn't half the time the doctors thought I was going to do it in, because I did what I was supposed to do. I focused, and I did not let it defeat me whatsoever.
Johnny, you mentioned the explosion as you're walking out of that curtain. Walk us through what's going on in your mind as you walk out for that return match and the crowd just goes wild.
So I'm, like I said, I was match 1, first wrestler to the curtain. So I'm already geared up. Like, I've been geared up for like 3 hours, anticipating, like just ready. Like, you know what I mean? I'm just ready to be back. Like, I'm ready to just walk through that curtain. And I could have had crickets. There could have been nobody in the stands, and I would have been happier. Like, it would have made me just as happy, you know. But to listen to that crowd just go insane, like to hear, you know, when my music hits, you know, at the beginning of my music, it's air raid sirens for about 10 seconds, and then the music actually hits. When I hear them cheering before that music even hits, during those air raid sirens, I'm backstage just tearing up right before I go through that curtain. And I know that as soon as I go through that curtain, the waterworks might come just a little bit, but you know, it was a great moment. And it was a moment that I didn't think I would ever be able to experience again at one point, because, you know, wrestling saved my entire life. It really did. And it has on more than one occasion. And to be able to walk back through that curtain after something so life-threatening happening to me, you know, was really a blessing and an eye-opener for sure. So I didn't take it for granted. And, you know, every now and again, I'll watch the match back just to hear that. You know, if I need a little pick-me-up or something, like, you know, I'm not feeling it today, I'll watch that back and just be like, listen to the way they were.
You know, you talked about going in before that match. You were geared up. You were ready to go about 3 hours before curtain time. I kind of want to ask this, and not necessarily for your comeback, but just in general. What do you do to get yourself motivated, to get yourself geared up the day of the show? When you're about ready to walk out to that ring, what are you doing to hype yourself up?
So honestly, you really, so my character is very intense. I'm very vocal. I'm very noisy. You know, I'm very intense. My personality backstage to get hyped for that is me literally sitting in my chair and ignoring everything and being the quietest guy in that locker room. And that's who I am. I am the quietest person in that locker room. I mean, I will respectfully interact, you know, definitely shake hands with everyone, all that stuff. But in order for me to get into that mind focus, I kind of tune everything out. I kind of just tune everything out, and I become that quiet guy that just sits and watches, you know. And, you know, I've even had other wrestler friends, you know, Johnny, how can you be so calm and collected? But as soon as your music hits, it's like the switch flips and you become like this crazy, like intense person. But backstage, you know, you're just watching this, you know, cool, calm and collected, but then the music hits and you're just like, and, you know, I'll pace a little bit as well right before my match. I'll walk back and forth, probably walk outside, you know, just to get in the right headspace and all that. But for me, in order to transform into the character from John to Johnny, it takes no effort whatsoever, because it goes back to that being yourself, just turned up to 1,000, like those characters were when they in the Monday Night Wars, like Foley, The Rock. You know, the more they were themselves, the more authentic they became. And when I created Johnny Faith, you know, it wasn't my first gimmick that I wanted to do. I was trying to do something different. I didn't want to do a military gimmick. I wanted to do something completely different, you know, but it became so natural to me that it was a no-brainer, you know. And the authenticity behind it is 100% real. Everything behind my character is all me. There's nothing that the last name's different. That's about it. But that's not even a different last name anyway. But that's it. Other than that, it's all me 100%. So in order for me to get hyped up for something like that, even when I was in the Army and in combat, I was the calm, cool, collected, just observing type person. So I really don't have any crazy rituals or anything. I'm the quietest guy in the locker room, actually.
Your military background probably helps you with that. You've probably been in numerous situations where where you've learned to be quiet, calm, cool, and collective. How are you after a match? Take you a while to come down from that, or how is that process?
So usually I'll take it easy for a second. Like I'll whoever I'm wrestling, or whoever's in the match, involved in the match, referee. First I'll get with the promoter and make sure, hey, is that what you wanted? Like, we good? Like, I just wanted to check in with them to make sure that, that's what they needed for their show or wanted. Then I'll check on my opponent, make sure he's good. Then I'll check the referee if they're not reffing another match or something. And then once I shake all their hands and re-thank them for the opportunities and stuff, then I will go for about 10 or 15 minutes and just cool down, get out of that mind space, take it down a couple notches, because sometimes it's kind of hard to flip the switch off. Sometimes I'm amped up for a while, especially if I'm like early in the show, because then I hear everybody out there cheering and stuff, and it still keeps me all hyped up. And then I got to go out there for intermission, so I still got to be all hyped up. So usually I just go gather myself outside, somewhere for about 5-10 minutes all alone, and then I'll just, it'll be like a normal thing. I'll just go back to my normal quietest guy in the locker room.
That's awesome. Let's kind of shift gears a little bit. One thing we like to do, the name of the show is Card Subject to Change. So every once in a while, we like to play a little fantasy booking. I want to ask you, is there anyone that you, whether they are living or dead, past or present, is there anyone you would love to step in the ring with to have
Cody Rhodes?
Oh,
Cody Rhodes.
Gonna take that WWE title, I see.
Even if you asked me this question 10 years ago, it'd be the same answer. It's been Cody Rhodes, like ever since I can remember. It's been Cody Rhodes. I don't know what drew me to really liking Cody Rhodes as much as I do. I'm talking like even back when he was with Legacy and all that. Like, I'm talking early Cody Rhodes all the way to now. I mean, I know a lot of people are on the Cody Rhodes train, and that's great. But I've been following him for a minute, and I've always wanted to step into the ring with him. To be honest with you, I just want to get hit with the crossroads. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I just want to see the crossroads up close.
How many crossroads would it take to put Johnny Faith away?
But I mean, Cody Rhodes, anytime somebody asks me who I would step into the ring with, past or present, I mean, Grandpa's always number one. I'd love to step into the ring with him. Me baby, him heel. He was a super bad heel. That's always number one in my book, but obviously can't happen. So Cody Rhodes is always, he's always going to be an answer that I throw out there to people, because I've always admired Cody Rhodes and his work, and not because of who his dad is either, because of who Cody Rhodes is.
Absolutely, he is definitely not in his father's shadow, and he worked really hard to do that, whether it's back in the early days during Legacy, or even when he saddled with a terrible gimmick like Stardust. He worked really hard to do the best he could with what he was given. And yeah, I love that answer, because it feels like you're very much the same.
Yeah, and we even talked about, I think, pre-show about gimmicks that people shouldn't have had. And I'm not saying the Stardust gimmick wasn't a gimmick that Cody shouldn't have had. I mean, obviously, people were kind of baffled by it and wondering why a guy like Cody Rhodes got a gimmick like that. But if you look at his brothers, kind of understand why. Hey, it works with one Reynolds. Can it work with the other Reynolds? And like you said, Cody Rhodes took that Stardust gimmick and ran with it, and just did all kinds of stuff that I didn't think was possible with something like that. Because you don't really see many cartoonish characters kind of like that in WWF anymore, or WWE anymore.
While we're on the subject of Cody Rhodes, I absolutely loved the dashing Cody Rhodes. With the mask and the way he hit his face and he was ashamed. And I love that, dude. I thought he nailed that. I thought he knocked that out of the park. And I mean, I know we'll never see that again, but I really love that time for Cody.
And he brought back that old school Intercontinental belt.
Yes, he did.
With the white strap.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And that is the best Intercontinental belt of all time. I don't care.
Yeah, he brought that back.
Yep.
You know, but his American Nightmare freaking thing he's on right now is just, whew, just hard.
He's on an incredible run. That's for sure.
He is, and you know, I'm very happy for him, and I'm, you know, I am glad that everything has framed out for him the way it has over the past couple of years since he left AEW and, you know, went back to WWE and all that, you know, because that was a big question mark, you know, back then, you know, with Cody Rhodes. You know, when he jumped ship back to WWE, I was, you know, it was kind of question marks, like, were they gonna take care of him, push him, bury him? Like, what are they gonna do? Put him on the shelf? Like, give him another Stardust gimmick? Like, what were they gonna do? And no, he took that opportunity and just straight to the top.
Absolutely.
When he made his return at WrestleMania 38 and Kingdom hit, that goosebumps. I got chills.
Yeah, definitely. And then you saw the little graphic pop up on the screen right there, and yeah, it was good. But you know, he will always be a wrestler that I will always would love to get into the ring with if it was ever possible, you know, no matter what. I mean, you know, because not just because of his lineage and his heritage and his family name and all that, because of who he is as a person. You know, I met him a few times as well at some indie shows and all that. And he was always a stand-up guy, always a nice guy, always wanted to spread some kind of knowledge, some kind of something out there to you, just get you learning a little bit.
That's always great to hear. I love hearing those type of stories about guys when you meet them, how great they are. And for the most part, you meet wrestlers and they're pretty cool. You know, very rarely do you get, I don't know if I've been blown off or anything like that, but it's great. I haven't met Cody. I'd love to, but I love hearing that he is what he is on TV. And that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, definitely. He is.
Well, we are talking with Johnny Faith on the Card Subject to Change podcast, the podcast by the fan for the fan, powered by Lopez Pizza, built by Durham Remodeling, colored by Ryan Allison Tattoo, and of course, protected by Jared Zook of Country Financial. Johnny, we've had a fantastic conversation, and I know we're very respectful of everyone's time. We're getting close to that hour mark. But before we get you off the hook, got to let people know where they can find you on socials and where they can see you coming up in the ring.
All right, so my socials, I am on X or Twitter, whichever you want to call it, Instagram and Facebook, and it's all at Johnny Face 704. Same with my YouTube and my TikTok. So Johnny Face at Johnny Face 704. That is where you can find me everywhere, pretty much. And then I got a show this weekend in Matthews, North Carolina with Extreme World Wrestling. It is the Capone Cup Memorial Tournament. So I will be close to my hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina. I think Matthews is about 20 minutes away. This weekend with Extreme World Wrestling. And then the following weekend, 24 August, I will be in Wichita, Kansas for Heartland Championship Wrestling to finish out the month of August.
I've got one more question I want to ask regarding finding you out there on the wonderful internet. You talked about rewatching that first match back. Where can we find that first match? Is it on YouTube, your return match?
I can put it on YouTube. Actually, it is not on YouTube. They actually have it on their Patreon subscription. Heartland Championship Wrestling does, but I can put it, I believe, on my YouTube page now. So maybe that's something I need to look into on getting done as well, because I never really thought about, sharing the love. I mean, it's on their Patreon and that's a subscription thing. I understand that, but I think I might be able to swing something for you gentlemen, for sure. So y'all could check that out, because sure. It's very surreal, and even the whole match is very surreal, and even the ending and the way it ended and all that. So the whole 15 minutes was pretty good. But yeah, I will look into that for you, Wiz, and I will get back with you. And if anything, I could just throw it up on my YouTube page and send you a link or something. And you can watch it, because I don't want to take away from HCW. Right. if they got it on their Patreon, but I could at least maybe do a private thing and send you the link so you can watch it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I could definitely do that.
Well, Johnny, I want to thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. You have been great to talk with. Please come back anytime. We love talking wrestling, and you got some good stories.
Definitely, I enjoyed it, and I will definitely come back whenever I can get back at it. Definitely.
Absolutely.
You're always welcome here, man. We love talking wrestling with new people, and man, I never thought we'd be talking about the early days of Raw, 95 through 99, but we were, man. We were rocking and rolling there. That was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Like I said, it's just wrestling's been my lifeline, for a long time, and I just love enjoying talking wrestling like you guys do with other people, and I like telling some stories here and there, on my journey as well. So it's always a win-win when I can come on, a podcast or something like that. So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, gentlemen. Definitely.
Absolutely. Nick, we've got a big week next week. Are you excited for this one? It's been about a year since we've had the For Frequency's Sake Kingpin on the show, introducing him, indoctrinating him, if you will, into the world of wrestling. Doug Green will be joining us for part 2 of our Booger Eater's Guide to Wrestling. And Nick, what are we looking at next week?
We're looking at the Summer of Punk. Be 2011, the infamous pipe bomb promo, the match at Money in the Bank with John Cena. I think we're looking at another promo in there, and of course, the kiss to Vince as he left the arena. Johnny Faith knows what we're talking about there, and of course, we're talking about his match at SummerSlam that year as well. So we'll be encompassing all of those. That was definitely a hot time in wrestling. It does not seem like it was 13 years ago, fellas. That Punk was doing that stuff. It seemed about 5 years ago, but here we are 13 years later, and we'll have Doug in studio to talk about all the antics of CM Punk from that summer.
And then I can't believe it. We're the following weekend is All In. We're already to the second Wembley show for AEW.
Yeah, All In's on 2 weeks from today. I mean, it's here. It's quick. It's going to be here before we know it. And then, of course, you got Labor Day weekend the following week with plenty of wrestling going on. So if you're in for wrestling and talking wrestling and hearing what we have to say about wrestling, this is the place to be here for the next few weeks, of course. We appreciate all your support out there. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, leave a review. Let us know how bad we're doing. That's fine. I'm sure there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, and if you're new to the show, you can find all our archives over on YouTube at CSTC Podcast. Give us a subscribe, a like, share some of our videos. We're working on doing more short content here in the near future. So keep an eye out for that. But that's going to put a bow on this episode of Card Subject to Change. Again, thank you to Johnny Faith for joining us here in the studio.
Hey, thank you, gentlemen, for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Absolutely. For my tag team partner, one half of the For Frequency's Sake Tag Team Champions of the World, he is never wrong, Nick Bull. I am the Wizard CZ, and we will see you next week right here on Card Subject to Change.